I do get into that flow state, which is wonderful for getting me out of the perfectionism where I'm like, well, let's try this and let's try that. And oh, look at that cute thing they did. And let's do that over there. So like I'll build my energy, like, and I'll get less and less perfectionist once I know I got what they want. They got the Christmas card, everyone looking forward, right? And then it'll get a little more creative at the end. That's the part I love. And then it's hard to stop me. And then my husband will be like, he'll be trying to like signal me like,
Time to go. Well, hey everyone. Welcome to episode 431 of F-Stop, Collaborate, and Listen. I'm your host, Matt Payne, and this week we're diving into a genre we haven't explored in depth before, but one that's full of creativity, chaos, and heart: pet photography. My guest is Karen Hoglund, a Denver-based photographer who brings a thoughtful, artful approach to photographing dogs, cats, and the people who love them. With a background in fine art and graphic design, Karen has a unique eye for composition, color, and storytelling, even when her subjects are barking, sprinting, or distracted by squirrels. In this episode, we talk about photographing reactive dogs in wild landscapes, making most of all four seasons, the balance between landscape aesthetics and client needs, and why photographing pets is the perfect cure for perfectionism. We also chat about cat photography. Yes, it's a real thing. The gear that she relies on, and her thoughtful use of leave no trace principles to ensure responsible outdoor sessions. Whether you're a pet lover, a portrait photographer, or a landscape photographer curious about applying your skills in new ways, there's a ton to learn from Karen's approach to patience, play, and purpose behind the lens. All right, let's get to it. Here's my conversation with Karen Hoglund. All right, Karen Hoglund, it's great to have you on the podcast.
it's an honor to be here.
Yeah, this is really exciting. You were the very first person who has ever approached me to talk about pet photography, which I think is kind of one of those things that's like really picking up steam for whatever reason. And so I'm excited to have this conversation with you.
Yeah, and you have 4 cats, which we'll talk about at some point. So
I do, and I've dabbled a little in taking their photographs over the years.
okay, yeah, we'll definitely have to talk about that and the dogs that you used to have.
Yeah, and as you know, this is primarily most people who listen are landscape and nature photographers,
Right.
but one of my favorite things is to bring on people from other disciplines of photography and come up with all kinds of fun takeaways that would apply for the way people approach all aspects of photography.
Right.
Yeah. So Karen, for people who aren't familiar with you and your awesome photography, why don't you go ahead and tell us a little bit about yourself?
Sure, I'm Karen, and I'm a pet photographer. I live in Denver. I primarily photograph cats and dogs. I'm kind of an accidental landscape photographer because I live in Colorado. It's beautiful. Everyone wants their dogs' photos, in the mountains, or at least they want to make it look like it's in the mountains. I moved here 28 years ago. My husband's family is from here. I first visited Colorado when I was 11 years old, and we went to Buena Vista. And like as an 11-year-old, I was like, I'm going to live here someday. I'm going to have an 8-frame, and I'm going to have a horse, and I'm going to have 5 dogs and cats. And this was my, dream as a kid. Didn't exactly, work out that way, but I do live in Denver and have been a photographer pet photographer for 14 years. That's a whole long story, but I was actually a graphic designer for 25 years. So
I love that. And I can tell that you're not a native of Colorado because you called it Buena Vista.
Buena Vista. I can't make myself do it.
I'm the same way actually, because I think it's mostly from like Texans who called it Buny, but
Oh, okay.
yeah, anyway, it's people say Buena Vista, but whatever.
Okay. Yeah, I don't know. Yeah, but it was beautiful. I mean,
Yeah.
when we visited, it was the first time I'd really been in the mountains because I'm from Illinois. The suburb I lived in is basically they like plowed down a cornfield and built little track homes and tiny trees and not a lot
Right.
of nature.
Yeah, no, Colorado's Amazing. I hopefully will never leave. It's my favorites. So, how long have you been doing pet photography?
14 years. Yeah, so I quit my graphic design job in 2009.
Wow.
So,
Okay.
and then I didn't quite start right away.
Start off
Okay,
by
yeah.
here. Maybe tell us first how you got into photography, and then
Yeah,
maybe talk about how the pets thing came along.
sure. Yeah. So when I was a kid, I did drawing, painting. I didn't actually pick up a real camera until college. I thought that I was really good at illustrating. I was pretty good for a kid, but really photography was the medium I was best at. But it really took me like 20 years to figure that out. I had photography in college, but I didn't have the best camera. I couldn't really afford film. I just didn't get enough practice. And a lot of it was the darkroom. So, a lot of it's like loading up the canister in the dark and dodging and burning. And, it's good to know, but I didn't really learn the exposure triangle until way later.
Right.
I mean, I technically knew it. I think I got A's in the class, but I was not very good.
Gotcha.
So then I went on to be a graphic designer and I worked for ad agencies and I was hiring photographers. So they're, but big companies and you would organize, hire an illustrator, hire a photographer, organize the project. So that was good. I was around a lot of high-end photographers during that time. My husband was in film at that time, so we were kind of in that creative environment. But we wanted to move to Denver. So then we moved to Denver. I got a job at a children's book publisher, also hiring illustrators, hiring photographers. During that time it was about 2000 digital cameras came on.
Right.
And then people at my job were like, okay, now you're the photographer also, because they want to save money. And at that point, I had just switched to a large nonprofit job and I was the art director there. So it was actually kind of fun. And they didn't really care that much. They gave me a lot of freedom. So I would be shooting fundraiser events. I'd be going to the camps in the mountains that had horses and animals. And I've photographed a lot of children. I got a lot of, that 10,000 hours practice. That was those 8 years, tons of practice. So yeah, I started doing it then, but that was part of like my desk job, like I had a cubicle job. I kind of wanted a sabbatical, but I didn't know how long it would need to be. But I quit that job, which was kind of foolish because I had 5 weeks of vacation.
But now you have unlimited amount of vacation, right?
Yeah, I feel like it's like you're never working and you're always working.
100%. Yeah, that's
Yeah.
exactly.
So it's like, yeah, I can go for a walk in the middle of the day if I want to edit photos at 8 o'clock at night.
Yeah, that's exactly.
So,
So then how did the interest in pet photography come around?
so during that time when I had quit the day job, I was really burnt out and I wasn't feeling creative anymore. And that's part of the reason I needed a sabbatical. I just wanted to leave the kind of cubicle environment and I didn't really know how that was going to look, but I needed income. So I started walking dogs. I was doing freelance graphic design, of course, because I knew that, and trying to do family photography. I was trying to shoot families, things, kids. People told me I should do that because I was good with kids. But I really love the dogs. I was walking the dogs and it was so relaxing and I love their little personalities. And slowly, like, probably took a year or two. I mean, it took a lot longer than it should have. Started feeling creative again. And it was because of the dogs. And so I was like trying to capture some of the dogs that I walked because I knew their personalities really well. I had two dogs of my own and I was always photographing them. And then during that time, I was like, trying to get my family portfolio together and I showed an old coworker my portfolio and I asked her, to help me select what images to put on my website. And she's like, Karen, I'm going to be honest with you. your pet stuff is way better than your foundation photos. And she was correct. She totally was correct. Because it's a different skill set.
Right. Yeah, yeah. The humans talk back.
Well, you have to entertain them. You have to tell jokes. You have to get teenagers on board that don't want to be there. You
Right.
have to, when a toddler starts having a tantrum, then, and dad's checking his phone. I mean, it's a totally different skill set.
Right. 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 Yeah, that's funny. One of the things I wasn't prepared to ask you about, but now I'm really curious, and I'm just starting to recognize this in the photographs that you've sent over to me, is that I feel like your background in graphic design must have helped inform the way you see composition and the way that you understand how to arrange elements to make a pleasing composition and to make the pets fit within the environment that you're photographing. So I'd be curious if you could talk a little bit about how you've been able to leverage that graphic design background in your photography work.
Sure. Yeah, I think it's intuitive after so many years. So I'm lucky that way that I feel like it does come a little naturally to me. Because even in the chaos of the dogs doing all crazy things, I seem to be able to compose. But I do feel like I'm naturally drawn to like the more graphic elements, like shape, line, form, bright colors, or at least color, thinking about the color, thinking through the color theory. Like I want these to be complementary colors. That all, I had a fine art degree from college, so it's all in there for so many decades of doing that. And I used to really choose more locations that were maybe in town that had more like leading lines, non-nature, I guess.
Mm-hmm.
And then I noticed my clients really wanted nature. I mean, I can't
Right.
blame them. And then, even though they loved the photos that I took in the city, they were literally buying more. If there was a mountain in the photo, they would buy it big and put it over their couch.
Right. Yeah. No, that makes total sense. Well, let's talk about some of the fun challenges and rewards of photographing pets. So obviously you photograph cats and dogs.
Mhm.
How do the challenges of working with each species compare?
Well, you're correct. They're very different species. Dogs, you can kind of, you can make a lot of noises. I use a lot of like squeaks or duck call, get their ears up. You can kind of have your assistant back there just doing jumping jacks and kind of hyping them up. That would freak out a cat.
Right. Like, see you later.
Yeah, you don't want to be making like crazy noises, because cats are more prey than dogs are. So dogs, of course, are more comfortable outdoors. Although you'd be surprised how many dogs are just kind of house pets. If you take a Chihuahua up to the top of the mountain, they're like, "Oh boy,
What am I? Where am I?
I'm a lap dog." Yeah. So yeah, it's a little challenging. The cats I love. Of course, I have a cat right now, Mr. Butter. And he's actually my first cat as an adult,
Oh, wow.
which is crazy since I've been photographing dogs, and cats for 14 years. So we always had big dogs. The last one, our golden retriever, who passed a year ago, he hated cats, but he was a great like model, and he loved hiking. And we do a lot of hiking, we used to do a lot of camping. My husband's super outdoorsy, grew up here. So I always was spending a lot of time in the landscape, in nature. And that was a huge appeal of moving here.
Yeah, for sure. So how do you incorporate the natural landscape with the pets? Like, what is the trick to doing that?
Well, it's probably similar to most landscape photography where you want something in the foreground, ideally. Maybe tall grass or a bush or something, a rock. And then, the planes of like they're in the middle, they're not just floating there. The worst thing is when it accidentally looks like a green screen.
Oh,
It's
right.
like, it's like the dog's in the front, and then it looks like, you just threw in this perfect background. That's not good. So you kind of have to incorporate them. And so a lot of times I'll put them on a log or a rock or something man-made like a boardwalk, or a bridge over a creek.
Yeah. Yeah. And I'm guessing that you're spending a lot of time thinking through what's in the background and like how to eliminate distracting elements and what makes for a more pleasing composition, things of that nature.
Yeah, I do a lot of location scouting.
Yeah.
So yeah, and that's why I miss the dog, because I would take him and we would just all the time just go into the foothills and go for hikes. And did a lot of hikes that were about half mile in, half mile in, because that's about how far my clients will want to walk.
Right. Right. Yeah. That makes total sense. Well, so let's talk a little more about cats. So obvious, maybe not obviously, but I'm guessing most of the time that's indoors. And of course, or it could be in someone's yard. So what do you look for in a great indoor cat portrait, and how do you work with the limited space?
Yeah, you're correct. They're all in the house. I've never had a cat there. I know there's adventure cats out there, but I've yet to meet them. So yeah, they're most comfortable at home. And it's a lot easier than you think. It's the same kind of thing. Like you need something in the foreground, so maybe I'll put a plant or flowers or something in front, even a piece of furniture to kind of frame them a little bit. Keeping it simple, back from my graphic design, that keep it simple, stupid still applies.
Yeah.
So, they need to keep them comfortable. So blankets, things that look a little different than normal. So like a cat tree, that's ugly, boring, keep them away from that. They're curious. They're always curious. So like, I don't know what your experience is with photographing your cats, but if you move something, if you take a plant and you move it across to a different window, all of a sudden they're like, hey,
Yeah.
what's
Like,
that?
what did you put that there for?
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, and they'll go over and they'll sit by it and they'll smell it.
Right.
So yeah,
Yeah.
actually, I'm curious what's your experience been with your cats?
It's hit or miss. I mean, I don't usually I try to photograph them when they're doing something super cute, like if they're sleeping together or, like if they're trying to play with each other and things like that. But it's funny with my cats, as soon as I get the camera out, they're like either like I'm out of here or they're like, "Oh, I want to see what that is. I haven't seen you mess around with that thing out here before. What is that thing?" And so then they're like, "No, no, no, I need you to go over there." So like I'm guessing you have some of those challenges as well.
Yeah, actually, I mean, treats of course work, but not really, because then they want more. Um, Feathers, I use a lot of I have like a peacock feather, and you just kind of it's almost like you point where you want them to go, and you kind of lure them up there, get them to think it's their idea.
Yeah.
I had my ways. Yarn.
Oh yeah, of
You
course.
uh,
Laser pointers are always good.
yes and no. I try to avoid things that make them kind of manic.
Right.
Definitely don't want that wide-eyed, the look, the hunting, crazy look. I try to avoid that.
Probably depends on the cat. Like if I have
Yeah.
one of my cats would be like, that would be perfect for him. Like that's how we want to remember him because he's
Okay.
crazy.
Right, right. What kind of cats do you have?
I have two pairs of siblings. Two of them are tuxedo cats,
Mm.
and the other two are like, I don't know, like mutts. I don't know. They're just like brown and red and normal.
Yeah. The one cat I saw looked kind of big. You had it in your stories on social, and that was a
Yeah,
big
I
cat.
have. He is pretty big,
Yeah.
and his sister is like half his size. Same,
Okay.
and yeah, but he just got the genes for being a big dude, I guess.
It's pretty cat.
No, he's super fun, and he's one of those cats that he has like a split personality. Like he wants to cuddle up with you, and like he so wants to hang out with you, and then other times all he wants to do is like make a lot of noise and like give me food, and he's annoying. Like I'll start knocking stuff around, and so he's very interesting in that way.
Okay.
Yeah.
When you had dogs, did you take them out with your landscape photography at all?
Not really. I went on a couple of hikes with my lab, and I have some pictures of her like on top of mountains and stuff like that, which was pretty cool. But I had a hard time with her off of leash. Like she just would not listen to voice command. Even though kept training her. Like if she, I think it was the border collie in her. If there was something that she caught scent of or that she thought she needed to go investigate, she's like, "See you later." So
Yeah.
I stopped hiking with her because she just would not listen to me.
Okay. We just keep our dogs leashed.
Yeah, totally. Yeah.
But we live in a more populated area, and there actually are leash laws in most of the parks here. Yeah.
Yeah, and when I was taking her out, it was like up trails, like up 14ers and stuff like that, and I think I took her 3 times, and like third time I took her up. We got maybe a mile up, and she just started running like into the forest. And I was like, okay, and she wouldn't come back.
Oh.
And then eventually she finally came back, but I was like, it just scared me. So
Yeah.
I ended up just taking her back to my campsite, and I was like, I guess I'm not hiking today.
Right. No, I can't blame you because there's cliffs and they'll chase a mountain goat or something. And yeah,
Yeah. But
it's
yeah,
also harassing to wildlife.
yeah, for sure. I just never felt right taking her hiking with me, so I just stopped. But I'd be curious, when it comes to pets in the environment, whether that be in someone's house or mountain scene or in the city or whatever, how do you decide like how much visual weight the animal has in the scene? Like, how do you decide that?
Well, it depends on what the final product is going to be. So I always ask my clients first, do you want a 20 by 30, 30 by 40 to go above your couch or in a hall or something? Or do you want something for your desk at work that's going to be 5 by 7, and completely different for those two things. I try to do a variety, just in case, because people don't always know what they want. If it was my own dog and I knew that I wanted something big, I would shoot him smaller in the scene. I love that.
Yeah, that makes sense. I guess I wouldn't have thought to ask people like, how do you envision the end product? Maybe I'd love to talk a little bit more about that in terms of like the business side of things. Like I've heard, and I'm pretty sure like the best model for pet photography is like you have a relatively accessible session fee, and then the business is all about marketing the prints.
Definitely. And unfortunately, I have like too good of taste in what kind of prints I want, and I order from like the very best labs. So my cost of goods is like sky high. But I wanted to offer something that they can't just get, from Shutterfly or Costco. I mean, well, even a lot of the labs, the mainstream photographer labs, I felt like they weren't great. I did actually really enjoy your podcast about printing.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, because it's tough. Definitely, I'm exposing and editing for the final printed product.
Right.
Definitely.
Yeah, I mean, I'm assuming that's the entire goal is to get people to buy something that they can put on their wall, and bigger the better.
Yeah. Yeah. And it's because it's the dog or the cat, I feel like with the nature, it kind of gives like the picture a little more meaning, maybe, especially if the dog is at its end of its life and they're trying to have something to remember them by.
Indeed. Yeah. Yeah, it's funny. I was talking to somebody maybe about a week ago now on our Discord channel, and he was interning or like assisting a pet photographer in Denver.
Okay.
Maybe it's you. I don't know, but he
No.
was telling me that that they were ordering like really inexpensive prints from Miller's, from like MPix, but it's Miller's as like the professional
Yeah, right.
line, and it was like a 20 by 30 behind glass for like $200 or something like that is what their cost is, and then of course like they're selling them for two grand or some insane amount of dollar amount.
Right. It's tough because since I use really nice vendors and really nice framing, it's hard to compete with that. I get a lot of repeat clients that know, oh yeah, this is nice and I want another one. But yeah, I mean, there are a lot of pet photographers in Denver now. Matter of fact, we just had a meetup with like a dozen of us.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. I became friends with a couple other pet photographers. have some photographer friends, not as many as I'd like. Just working on that.
Yeah, I wouldn't have thought it would be so competitive, but I guess it makes sense.
Yeah, it is. I guess all of photography really is.
Yeah, yeah, that's true. All right, well, let's talk more about some of the challenges of day of. Let's say you've got a golden retriever and you're in like a really idyllic scene. How do you handle, example, like a dog that's super reactive or super shy or super highly energetic? Like, how do you handle those unpredictable environments, or maybe there's a silver lining to that as well?
Right. Yeah. Well, there's always the golden retrievers that are very, very energetic. The young ones are crazy, crazy ones. One photo shoot I remember, it was October, which should be like a pleasant temperature, but it was like 85. I don't know why.
And it's Colorado. Yeah, that's
You're right.
possible. Yeah.
Well, we were like on this side of the mountains. Denver's on the plains. It's really not in the mountains. We had the mountain view, and then the owners show up, and like it turns out like she was like having a hard time breathing. She had like bronchitis or allergies or both, or I don't know. So I was like, we're not gonna be able to walk as far as I thought were. And her dogs are like chomping at the bit. They like hadn't gotten walked, and
Oh,
they
yeah.
were just like young and crazy. And I'm like, okay, how are we going to change this plan? So we decided to do running photos.
Oh,
But I
yeah, cool.
didn't even take them off leash. So what I did is I found a area of the path that had scrub oak on either side, a really thick scrub oak. So they're probably not going to go off stage left into that. I had my husband hold the dogs at like around the bend, and then I had the people on either side of me with like treats and all the things. And then we would be like, okay, let him go, and running, towards us, like, and that's kind of what we just went with it. They're crazy, and we're just gonna let them run.
I
And
bet those turned out really cool.
yeah, they're really fun. So I've been doing that a lot lately with the young ones, and you have to do it kind of at the end if it's hot like that day because it can be panting. Bring water with. The reactive dogs, I just suggest a location with less people, less dogs. It's almost not as important how pretty it is as how accessible and other, like let's say in Boulder, there's a beautiful park system like right in town, but they have a voice recognition dog tag thing, so you can, if your dog passes, like, come here, and then they come and then they pass it, they don't have to be on leash. I
Oh,
would never go to those parks because then those dogs are gonna run. Everyone's well-trained dog is gonna run up and say hello to my client's dog, and they're gonna growl at them.
right. You need to have a little bit of control over the environment.
Right. So I tend to pick parks where leashes are required. And yeah, and you can make any area look pretty. I mean, Colorado's so pretty.
Yeah, and I'm guessing that there's favorite times of year too. Like fall is probably highly requested, and with the changing aspen leaves and things like that, or in the summertime or early summer, you can get the mountains with snow on them, but it's nice outside, that kind of thing.
Yeah. I would say May is everyone's been waiting for
Right.
spring. It's so pleasant to be outside. I don't always love that green. It's just like the whole scene is green. Um, so that's a challenge. But it is pleasant, so that's popular.
Yeah.
And then in the summer, when it's too hot, we will go up to the mountains. 'Cause you go up to like Evergreen from Denver, and it's 10 degrees colder.
Sure.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah. So how do you come up with your list of locations? Like, do you have like a whole inventory in the back of your head? Like, I can go here, I can go here, I can go here. With this situation, that situation, like walk me through kind of how you developed your shot locations and like how many you
Sure.
have in the back of your head.
I actually have them organized in my software, and I'll do a planning Zoom call with my clients, and I'll kind of match make them to the right location for them. So I'll show them pictures of a couple of locations. So I have them all easy to grab, little thumbnails, and then let's say I'll try to make it within like half an hour of their house, just so they're not driving forever. I'll think about whether the dog's reactive. think about the time of year. So yeah, aspens, there's certain places that only have evergreens and no aspens.
Sure.
The evergreens might be good for February with the snow on them. So depending on the time of year, I'll just like, I've been doing it long enough that I have enough examples from actual photo shoots. So they'll get a pretty good idea of, realistic idea of what it's going to look like. I'm like, okay, it's Thanksgiving weekend. You waited too long to do your photos. The leaves are gone. But realistically, it will look just like this because this person had this photo taken, you know. So I literally just like show them photos until I can see their reaction and see which ones they're drawn to. And I love all those locations. I have permits for all those locations. So I just kind of maybe direct them to the top two so they're not overwhelmed and give them a few other choices. And yeah, it's not rocket science, but it's just like what they like, since it's so custom. If they really like, one person said she hates red rocks. She hates how the red rocks look. Like,
Okay.
not want reddish rocks. Good to know.
Hey, not everyone likes cool red rocks. It's fine.
Right, right.
She would hate my lab.
Exactly. Right.
So how many? I mean, just ballpark. Like how many locations do you have back up your sleeve?
Good question. Solid dozen.
Oh, okay.
And I always
For some reason, I'm
it.
thinking like hundreds.
Oh, I'm sure. Well, there are, but the tried and true ones that are close to town, maybe 2 dozen. But the ones that I would like, I'll try different locations with my own dog first. The other interesting thing is a lot of my clients have private property in
Oh, yeah,
Colorado,
nice.
like second homes, mountain homes. So often I'm going to these really cool places that no one else gets to go. It's like been in their family for 4 generations, and it's like this amazing 30-acre or 100-acre ranch. Like, and it's only like 45 minutes from Denver, and I would have never been able to go there. It's really cool.
Yeah, those are always. I did a like a family portrait shoot once like that here in Durango, and it was one of those same situations like you had to get like gate access to this
Yeah.
special area, and then it was like right on the Animas River, but like outside of town, and right off of their deck they had this perfect view looking up the river, up to the mountains, and I was like, man, I didn't even know this was here. This is
Right.
awesome.
Yeah, it's
Can I
actually a
come
nice
back?
perk. Yeah.
Like, wow.
Yeah, but you can't location scout first. I mean, you can do Google Earth, but I'm actually pretty good at like quickly looking around and
Sure.
figuring out what I want.
And you also mentioned permits, and that's something that I guess I feel like I wouldn't have necessarily thought of when it comes to pet photography, especially given the fact that you might not necessarily know exactly where you're going to go until maybe a few days before you're doing it, although it sounds like you have a whole planning process.
Yeah,
Like, are you getting those permits well in advance, or do you get them after the client chooses? Like, what does that look like for you?
I buy a few annual permits that cover a lot of different places.
Okay.
But if they say want a state park, those are quarterly. So I would just, when they decide, I would buy it, and then I might talk someone else into going to the same state park that quarter, you know. But yeah, I have certain favorites, but I feel like I'm always finding new favorites. And within those permits, there's tons of parks.
Right. Okay. That makes way more sense then. Because I was imagining this logistical nightmare of like you have this laundry list of locations and a laundry list of permits. And then it's like, oh, permit expired. We can't go there. Like that kind of a situation. So,
It's not the hardest part of the job, no. I mean, I try to keep it relatively simple. I don't particularly want to drive more than an hour because I'll be driving home, at night after the session. And
yeah.
a lot of my clients aren't that comfortable with mountain driving. So I don't want to do that to them. I don't want it to, like, we're here to dusk and now you have to make it home on this windy, scary road with deer, you know.
Hey, man, you moved to Denver.
I know, right, right. Well, I'm one of those people that moved to Denver. That was 28 years ago, but yeah.
Maybe that's a good segue to talk a little bit more about my next question. So I'm guessing that a lot of your clients want like these epic adventure style photos of their pets without the actual adventure involved. So how do you create the illusion of a grand outdoor experience while keeping your pet photo session manageable for both the pet and the owner?
Well, one trick is you start at locations that are up high so that you're not hiking uphill. A lot of people aren't as good a shape. So if you start at, if the parking lot's up high and then you're just like kind of walking half mile, you know, horizontal across the landscape, it's not that hard. And then, I mean, you know how you can make a small mountain look much bigger. I mean, you don't have to have Long's Peak in the background. I feel like most people, as long as there's some sort of mountain or rocks or nature, even like a cool tree trunk or something, it just has to look different than like a typical city park.
Right. And like not quite as manicured and curated like a park would be.
Right.
Yeah. So it's all about the location.
Yeah, and there's a lot of, I mean, it's amazing what you can find in the foothills here. I mean, it goes to nature pretty quickly.
Yeah. It's funny, before we recorded, we experienced some really fun technical challenges, and you brought up the fact that you have a little bit of perfectionism in you. And I'm guessing that that can create some issues when it comes to pet photography because it could be really chaotic in nature. Maybe share a story or a couple stories about how a particularly unpredictable or funny session maybe just kind of corrected your perfectionism a little bit.
Well, I'm lucky that my husband is the opposite of me and he goes with the
Yes.
flow really, really well. I'm glad that he is able to be my assistant a lot of the times. And then the other assistants that I use are also really laid back. So that's helpful. And even with my clients, I try to, have a lot of type A clients. I mean, I have a lot of high achieving people. They love their dogs and cats, but, they're used to predictability and things. So
Yes.
in trying to get them to relax and go with the flow, I'm kind of talking myself into it too. I'll say, in a perfect world, your dog would be sitting here and your dog would be looking at us and looking very cute. That's probably not going to happen. So, I'm always, and so one time, I'm a planner, right? So we had planned to have, I found out the woman had gotten a convertible for her birthday. So I was like, well, we're going to have your golden retrievers in the convertible. So we had brought the convertible. We did all the other nature shots. And at the end, we were going to put the dogs in the convertible. They were supposed to be like looking directly at us. Because I don't know, that's what most people want. Well, what happened is someone was walking their dog in front of the car, and it's like squirrel, you know, these like, whoa, what's that? Well, it was perfect. It was like the best happy accident because they were looking through the windshield from the car. It looked like they were driving the car.
That's awesome.
Yeah, so it was really funny. And the funny thing too was the one dog was a puppy. I think she was like 4 months old. So we were really worried about her jumping out of the convertible. And so I actually had my husband crouched down in the convertible, talk about chaos, holding a squirmy puppy. Like she did have a leash on, but he's like holding this puppy. And then he can feel her looking at the dogs, ahead. So I would say that a lot of times what happens is happy accidents. Like if you're willing to, if the dogs look to the side, like I'll tell people if you're posing with your dog and the dog looks off at something, go ahead and you also look at that thing. And then it looks like you're looking off at the sunset or,
Sure.
so you kind of work with it. I mean,
Yeah, it sounds like there's a lot of overlap between pet photography and landscape photography because I feel like a lot of landscape photographers spend like months and months and months planning everything out and like, how do I have to hike here in the wet? But then there's so many things you don't have control over, right? Like weather or like, maybe like there's no clouds and you thought there'd be clouds or your equipment doesn't work exactly the way you thought it was supposed to work or whatever. And so you have to improvise and you have to like roll with it and figure out how to make do with what you got. And honestly, like in my experience, that's a lot of times those are the better photos anyway, because it kind of forces you to get more creative. And
lean into kind of that uncomfortable area. But luck favors the prepared, right? So like all of that
Yes.
pre-planning and that preparation that you did allows you to be able to be more open and flexible to improvise when it's needed.
Right. Another picture I'm thinking of is one of my dog, my golden retriever, where it was late November and we were going to go for a hike, and it was we were just location scouting, but the weather was kind of windy, kind of stormy. My husband's always talking to me, just go anyway. Like, he grew up here, the weather changes.
Exactly.
In Illinois, when a cloud comes in, it like sucks and is there for 3 days. So I've grown to be a little more optimistic. So we're like, okay, fine, we'll go hiking. And we were taking this picture by this log, and then all of a sudden this like massive lenticular cloud, which looks like a UFO, this like those crazy, looks like a tornado almost, comes up. It's there 3 minutes, maybe something like that. Luckily, I kind of knew where I wanted to put Murphy and did it quickly. That's the other thing. I have to be quick, really quick.
Yeah. You gotta be quick on your toes. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, because I'm guessing you get to a location and maybe there's an awesome cloud or some trees or whatever, and you're like, okay, I need to make sense of this scene really quickly. And that's where I'm guessing you kind of lean into that intuitive side of having that graphic design background, and like that stuff just comes second nature. Whereas I feel like for a lot of photographers, that stuff does not come second nature at all.
Yeah, it's that in practice. I mean, I do get into that flow state, which is wonderful for getting me out of the perfectionism where I'm like, well, let's try this and let's try that. And oh, look at that cute thing they did. And let's do that over there. So like I'll build my energy, and I'll get less and less perfectionist once I know I got what they want. They got the Christmas card, everyone looking forward, right? And then it'll get a little more creative at the end. That's the part I love. And then it's hard to stop me. And then my husband will be like, he'll be trying to like signal me like,
Time to go.
I heard him talking about dinner and have to go to the bathroom. Like, you might want to let him go. And I'm like, oh man, look at the light. It's so pretty. So.
That's awesome. Yeah, and it's funny because like not everyone appreciates that light. You know what I mean? They're like, oh, it's getting dark. I don't know. It's like, no, this is the best.
Sometimes I can push people, and a lot of my clients do trust me, especially the repeat ones. And it's so flattering when like people say, we trust you. Like I tell them to go stand on the side of the road, and they're like, okay, we trust you.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. I'm curious, how do you use lighting and other gear in pet photography? Because I've dabbled in portraiture and small weddings and things like that, and I've got like a small little off-camera flash setup that I use, but I'd be curious kind of what you use.
Well, small is good actually, because the gear gets pretty heavy pretty quickly. My backpack is so heavy. I've had my Nikon flashes in the past, but I went to Pro Photo about 2 years ago, and their little A2 is very, very small. It's like the size of a can of Coke or something, it's like small. And the softbox is just like one little click. And even just saving like that few minutes makes me more likely to use it. So I do like it for, if you're doing backlighting, it is really nice for fill.
Yeah, maybe you could send me a link to that. Be curious, because I use like way back in the day. So I started Nikon, but I still have my Nikon flash, and I use that with my Sonys, and I just use Pocket Wizards, and then I've got like a Manfrotto light stand with I can't remember the name of the brand, but it's like I just watched that Strobist series, like that free blog site on Strobist, and got whatever he recommended, and it's pretty good.
Yeah, I've gone to a workshop and I liked it. I mean, it's expensive, but to me, it's so much quicker and it's easier for my assistant to set up. And the problem is if it's windy, you really just,
Oh, yeah, game over.
yeah, then you can't. Especially with cats, I don't use flash for the most part. It depends. The younger they are, usually the more fearless they are and the
Oh,
more
yeah, sure.
playful.
Right.
So you can get away with it. But like if a dog or cat is like skittish, I wouldn't even use it on the dog because it is maybe. And horses, sometimes they don't even like the modifier. Like that kind of scares them.
Yeah, and I don't know, off-camera flash is kind of it's an art form, in my opinion, like understanding how to dial in the aperture and the, how strong you want the light and all that stuff. I think a lot of people are missing out if they don't at least experiment with it, because it can do some really cool stuff.
It can save the day if, it's like sucked in clouds and you want a little light, or you just like, some people are so hard to schedule. Like, we're going to do it and we'll just make it look like it's sunny.
Yeah. Well, and I'm sure for a lot of your situations, like having direct sun is maybe not ideal unless it's like low light.
Yeah. I mean, for animals, it's not as bad, but often the people want to be in some of the photos too. It's just not flattering.
Right, exactly. And that's where the flash comes in handy. Yeah. So you mentioned you have an assistant, and I'm guessing it's not necessarily every time you go out, but I'd be curious to hear you talk a little bit more about kind of how you adapt to doing these sessions when you're by yourself versus when you have an assistant.
Well, you need a wagon if you don't have an assistant. So, yeah, if I don't have an assistant, I try to, if it depends. Like with cats, an assistant is just one more person to freak out the cat.
Oh,
So it's not such a good thing. And then like my husband, he's a really good assistant because he has a film degree, film background for 20 years. Like, he's really good. But I'm always telling him, like, do not pick up the cats. Do not use up their bandwidth, by like the stranger.
right.
And then I'll turn around.
Do that at the end.
Yeah, I turn around and he's holding the cat. The cat's purring. I'm like, whatever. But so when I don't have an assistant with the cats, I mean, I just move kind of slowly and have all my little things. And usually I have them close off doors to like the basement or places. And, actually, who's my assistant? The client.
Yeah.
Because the client knows their cat way more than I do. And it's a real collaboration because dogs are fairly predictable. But even then I will ask the person, like, are they treat motivated? The more I can know about the animal, the dog or cat's person, that is really who I'm collaborating with also, always.
Right. Yeah, that makes sense. Yeah, that's awesome. Well, let's shift gears a little bit. I'd be curious to hear you talk a little bit about leave no trace. So how do you incorporate leave no trace principles in your approach to pet photography?
Sure. Well, of course, there's poo bags, a camera bag with poo bags. I should pack it out. Leashes, I don't necessarily, even if the dog is well behaved, I don't want them trampling all the plants, all the alpine plants, and peeing on them and chasing animals. I don't want them to do that. And it's kind of nice to have the leash too, because then they're not going in tall grass with ticks. They're not jumping in the stream. They're not coming across a rattlesnake. I'm totally afraid of snakes. So we try to stick to the path. That's how we leave no trace. We stick to the path, and Karen won't find any rattlesnakes. So yeah, that, and the permits, and just obviously the mountain parks are well traveled. We try not to, not we are to the photographer that leaves confetti and you hear terrible things in the photography groups about, baby reveal, and there's like pink glitter all over the mountain, and we would never do that. So yeah, we don't really bring props into the mountains. I mean, it wouldn't be any more impact than if you just took your dog for a walk down the mountain.
Yeah, that's great. Yeah. And it's something I feel like a lot of people maybe wouldn't necessarily think of on their own. And I'm glad to hear that more and more the entities that are issuing permits are requiring people to actually think about that stuff.
It's actually a requirement that you have the dogs on leash, and even says like even dog, when you're photographing, even dogs.
Yeah. So I also understand that you're transitioning away from engaging with horse photography and you're referring your clients to your assistant. I'd be curious to hear you talk a little bit about how mentorship and collaboration have played a role in your business model.
Sure. Well, I wish I had started using my assistant Angela years before. I was a little spoiled because my husband is my free assistant and he enjoys it, and he career changed about the same time I career changed. So his way of kind of like keeping his foot in the creative world is to help me. So I could get a little lazy because I have another artist available, you know.
Right.
A few years ago, one of my photographer friends called me and she's like, I have an intern. She's amazing. She has 2 horses and a dog and a cat. You need to meet her. And I was like, yeah, I'm not looking for an assistant. And then the very next day, I got a call for someone that wanted, like, it was a newborn foal, 3 horses, 3 generations of people. And I'm like, yeah, I do need an assistant. You know? So, so yeah, I like hired her for that job and I was like, oh man, this is addictive. This is so great. You know?
Yeah, and I'm guessing, so is she taking pictures as well, or she mostly just, no, okay, just helping kind of set things up and, like, hey, I need the flash now or whatever.
Yeah, though actually that first time at one point we were both trying to take pictures and we just got in each other's way. Because I was a little worried that the little filly wasn't going to have enough energy for very long and I wanted to get 2 different angles before she tired out. But we kind of regrouped after that and we're like, yeah, it's much better if she's like chatting with the people, kind of, getting them comfortable, handing out water, helping me. Well, she's a human, light stand, right? Holding the.
Right, totally.
That's hugely helpful because.
Right, you don't have to worry about wind.
Yeah, I mean, I had sandbags, and sometimes even she'll help me because she'll help me haul everything. When we're dealing with like water, sandbags, all the gear and everything, it is really, really nice just to be freed up to kind of look around and stuff instead of like, did I get all my bags?
Yeah.
So yeah, she's in finishing up her photography degree. She's like a second career person and so talented and I really want to see her succeed. Like she's so good.
Yeah, that's amazing. And I love that, you're not afraid to like, you're creating competition for yourself, but at the same time, it's like you're lifting up another person and it's great to be able to have a part in that.
Well, yeah, frankly, she's probably better for equine photography because she has her own horses.
Sure.
So starting in 2020, I was like really take it seriously, taking some courses, trying to figure out if I really wanted to go down that road. Because dogs and cats are house pets. And horses, that's like a whole different thing. And I like it visually. They're beautiful. But honestly, I don't have my own horse. So it's a little harder to break into that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I'd love to talk a little bit more about the business side of things. You mentioned it's getting more and more competitive. There's a lot of people doing pet photography. I imagine in a big city like Denver, there's loads and loads and loads of people that are like on Craigslist or whatever, or like on Facebook groups. It's like, can you recommend a pet photographer? And like 70 people recommend like their friend who like just bought a camera two days ago or whatever. So like, how do you stay top of mind and how difficult has it been for you to maintain a flow of business?
Yeah, I mean, it's constant. Marketing takes a lot of work, more work probably than the photography. I wish it didn't, but yeah, because a lot of people, when they first think of pet photography, I think they think of like Santa mini sessions or rescue photos to help them get adopted. And there's a lot of people that do that stuff for free. And I have volunteered at rescues, mostly earlier on, although I did volunteer at the cat rescue. But the funny thing is, they just wanted me to like play with the cats, socialize them. I'm like, okay. Because now with like cell phones, people can, get that. But so it's a hard thing trying to create that like higher end market. I prefer, maybe it's the perfectionist in me, maybe it's just because I like producing more quality things. I want to take more time and get a better product that's going to last forever and like just, I don't know, it's just how I am, I guess. I got kind of frustrated at my last job because they wanted to do everything the cheapest, and
Yeah. You said you were at a nonprofit?
Mhm.
Yeah. I worked in a nonprofit my entire life pretty much, and I totally get it.
Right, right. Like I remember once they had me getting bids to put a new sign on the building with the big logo, and I got like 3 bids, and the middle one was clearly the best value and the best product, and they're like, "Oh no, we're gonna go with the cheapest because that's just out of principle." Within a year, that sign fell off the building, literally fell off the building. So I was kind of like, if I start my own business, I'm gonna get the best vendor. Maybe not the most expensive, but or maybe if they are, that's okay. But I wanted the best quality that I could find because I was so sick of just going for the cheapest.
Right. I mean, I put a lot of work into that for my prints because it's like you could go with the very best, most expensive one, but if you find another vendor who does it just as well but the shipping is like half as much, like why wouldn't you go with the
Yeah,
one where, you know what I mean? So it's like,
shipping doesn't matter. Yeah.
you know what I mean? It's like there's lots of variables to consider when it comes to like running a business for yourself.
Yeah, and it changes. I've changed
Right.
vendors over the years, and the small labs that have come up that weren't there when I started, that are really doing some nice quality work.
Are you doing stuff local or are you sending it off to get done? Like what's your
I'm sending it off, yeah.
yeah.
But it's all like US based and yeah.
Are you using one lab, multiple labs? Like what's your approach to that?
Multiple labs because not every lab does everything. The niche down, like the album place I did, they only do albums. And then like the printing, framing, they primarily do that. And they do canvas too, really nice canvas. So yeah, I mean, I wish I could find a one-stop shop, but yeah, it is open to change. Could still change.
Oh yeah, no, I get it. I had kind of like gone all in with Reed Art and Imaging a few years ago.
Oh, right, yeah.
And then like all this like I put a ton of effort into it. Like I went in person, I met with their sales rep, I met with their whole production team and like developed all of my pricing on my website based on their pricing and like, all of this stuff, right? And then 2 years later, the week of Thanksgiving, they're like, "We're closing," and I was like,
I
"What?"
knew you were going to say that. Yeah, I know. Same. I was like, oh, it's so sad. You want to do local. The thing for Reed is, even though it's local to me, I still would have had to drive half an hour there and back to pick up everything. So,
Totally, and like here, there's nothing that's local, so I have to do it
yeah.
somewhere else. But yeah, that makes sense, and I like what you said about thinking about quality too, because I had mentioned earlier about that individual who said he was assisting another pet photographer, and he said that he honestly couldn't really tell the difference between. Let me take that back. He said he could tell the difference between like the $200 print from Miller versus maybe something that's like $400, but the clients can't. But I think it's at the end of the day, like you're still putting your name on it, right? And so I would have a hard time not doing something that I felt like very happy with myself.
That's exactly how I feel.
Yeah.
Yeah. And also, I found that the smaller, more high quality labs, you get less mistakes. They have more quality control.
Correct. Yeah.
So you're not like a lot of the big labs, they'll send you something and they don't even, it feels like they don't even look at it. And they're like, oh, I'll do it again. I'm like, well, it's kind of wasteful. And why don't you just look at it before you send it?
Right. And also like that just doesn't look good on your side too, right? Like you have to keep shipping something back to your customer over and over again. Like
Oh, I don't even tell my customer. It ships to me first. So they
makes
have to
sense.
deal with it. Yeah, I don't even want them to know, like if FedEx dropped the package or whatever.
Yeah. That makes sense because everything's local to you, but like when I sell prints, it's
Oh, right.
everywhere in the
Yeah.
world. So
Yeah, right.
yeah.
Yeah.
So my thing is like I need to make sure that it's super high quality.
Mm-hmm.
Like that if I didn't see it sight unseen and I got it shipped to myself, that I'd be confident that it would arrive the way that I would expect it to. And like that's the place you have to get to.
That would be harder to sell the way you're doing it. Because, like, for me, I have the clients see the actual finished piece and they can touch it, feel it, see it, look at the frame corners and everything. I saw someone last week that was looking at the canvas and he's like, look, it's like it glows, like the sky glows. And I'm like, good,
Yeah, that would be better I mean, that's why people have physical galleries, but like.
Oh, no, it's a different thing.
Yeah. Well, awesome. Well, I just had one more question for you. Who do you recommend our listeners learn more about here on the podcast?
Sure. Well, the first person is Karen Julia of Photo SEO. She's my SEO expert. I always say she was the best decision I made in 2020. So like February 2020, I hired her. I bought like her starter package and then the shutdown. And she's also a wedding photographer. So she had like no weddings. So she had a ton of time. I had a ton of time. She was like, you want to learn how, to build a new site in WordPress? I'm like, sure. So we've been meeting like every week for the last 5 years. And she's great. Specializes in SEO for photographers. And then Shelly Paulson would be the next person. She's an equine photographer. Honestly, she's one of the best photographers in my opinion, that I know. I kind of wish I was going into the horse photography because I'd love to take her mentorship. Her training is really solid. I was kind of teetering on the edge of like, should I like go all in and like do that? And then that's when I was like, yeah, I'm trying to talk Angela into doing that course. So, so like looking at similar but different photographers has been helpful, so that it wasn't all wasted to kind of bark up that tree. Another group of women that I found through exploring horse photography was, it's called Cowgirls with Cameras. And it's 3 women. It is Phyllis Burchett, Kara Taylor Swift, and Kim Beer. And they're hilarious. They'd be funny on your podcast because they kind of play off each other. They all are horse photographers. They're talented in different ways. They do lead workshops and retreats. And they just, I don't know, they're just kind of fun. Super talented women. Yeah.
That's cool. Well, Karen, this has been super fun, and we'll make sure we put in the show notes your website so that people can go check out your really awesome pet photography. But yeah, thank you so much. I had a great time, and hopefully people will get inspired to dabble in their own pet photography.
Yeah, they totally should add their dog to the landscape photography. If
Yes.
for no other reason, to just take a dog on a hike or spend some time with their dog, right?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, one of my favorite landscape photographers, she does that on occasion with her dog. Her name's Victoria Hack, and she has her big, I think it's like a husky or something, but she puts him in some really, really cool scenes.
Yeah, I mean, they do. Yeah, I'm sure you can't do quite the same work with a crazy dog with. Maybe her dog's really well trained.
I'm guessing it is. Yeah, totally. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, awesome. Thanks again.
All right. Thank you.
Well, thanks for joining me for another great episode. A huge thank you to Karen Hoglund for sharing her thoughtful and often hilarious approach to pet photography. It was such a fun and insightful conversation. If you're enjoying the podcast and you want to help to keep it going, please consider supporting the show on Patreon at patreon.com/fstopandlisten. Your support helps to make these weekly conversations possible. I'm a firm believer in the value for value model of content as opposed to sleazy marketing or a podcast full of non-stop advertisements. By supporting the show on Patreon, you help to continue that model into the future. And don't forget to sign up for the newsletter if you haven't already. There's a super fun giveaway coming next week, and subscribers will be the first to hear about it. You can find the sign up link in the show notes or on my website. Thanks for stopping in, collaborating with us, and listening. See you next week.